You think just because her dad is an elite warrior, she can walk around this school with her head held high? Right now, her hair is being yanked viciously, her face forced down onto the cold floor. The bullies smirk in satisfaction while the teacher stands there, cold and calculated, commanding, "Let the whole school see what a hero's daughter really looks like when she's at rock bottom." Surrounded by hundreds of scornful stares, the girl grits her teeth, refusing to let a single tear fall, because she knows any sign of defiance will only be twisted into another excuse to torment her. Everyone believes they've won completely. But in that exact moment, the door bursts open. The man who steps in isn't some absent, helpless father, but someone carrying raw power, capable of crushing an entire hidden network of corruption lurking behind the school's walls. In his hand is a folder loaded with evidence that will expose a horrifying secret no one dared touch. What sparked the storm about to wipe everything clean? Who's really behind turning a school into a systematic hell? Are you watching on your phone, laptop, or TV? Don't scroll away, because the justice here isn't just an ending. It's an earthquake that'll shatter every false belief you've ever had about the education system. Stay, because the truth about to be revealed will leave you shocked and breathless.
It wasn't just an ending. It was an earthquake, one that split a building down the middle so everyone could finally see what had been rotting inside. Zoe Carter scrubbed the last smear from the cracked porcelain until the bleach bit into her skin like teeth. Her palms were raw, her wrists stung, but the deeper ache lived in her chest, the quiet kind that didn't bleed where anyone could see it. The bathroom reeked of chemicals, sharp and clean, almost comforting compared to what waited outside. People, eyes, the hallway's hunger. She peeled off the gloves, tossed them aside, and stood there a moment with her breath trembling. Then she steadied herself, the way she learned to do whenever the world demanded a reaction it could punish. This wasn't detention. It was a ceremony. A public ritual where humiliation wore the name tag of discipline and adults called it growth. Zoe stepped into the hallway and sound hit her first, laughter snapping like a whip in the stale end-of-day air. Too bright, too loud, too many lockers reflecting too many faces, pretending not to be complicit. Tyler Reed's voice cut above it all, loud and delighted, the kind of joy that only existed when cruelty was rewarded. Beside him, his shadow paraded like a mascot for a rotten joke, an oversized, shiny wig bouncing on his head, lips twisted into something that tried to pass for a smile. Then Zoe saw it. Every mirror, every locker, every strip of metal and glass had been turned into a gallery of her worst moment. Blown up yearbook photos, braces bright as shackles, hair wild, face tense with old nervousness, pasted everywhere like warning posters. They'd chosen the ugliest angles, the most vulnerable frame, and built a hallway she had to walk through. She paused, her reflection multiplying into 100 versions of herself trapped behind paper and tape, a museum of remember your place. Tyler wiggled the wig like a trophy and called out to Ava, syrupy with pride, saying they'd nailed it. Ava Morrison giggled, light and practiced, then shoved a stack of friars into Zoe's arms like invitations to her own execution, asking if she wanted to sign one for her dad to frame. Zoe's knuckles went white as she tore the photos down, one after the other, refusing to look at their faces, refusing to feed them what they wanted. She said quietly that she didn't need this. Tyler's smile sharpened as he told her she always acted better than them, leaning in just enough for his words to sting, betting her fancy Navy SEAL dad was real proud. Zoe didn't snap. She turned away slowly, voice controlled, telling him to leave her dad out of it. Ava rolled her eyes and said nobody cared about some army guy who was never here, and the phrase cut deep, aimed at empty chairs and missed events, the distance Zoe never chose but everyone else used as a weapon. She swallowed the reaction rising in her throat because pain was currency here, and she refused to spend it. She gathered the torn photos into a fist, paper crumpled, tape stuck to her fingers.
The voices followed anyway, Tyler calling after her to smile for her next mugshot. The hallway narrowed, the lights pressed in. Zoe pushed toward the exit until Ava slid into her path, blocking it with the lazy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Ava shoved the wig toward Zoe's face, purring that she should try it on. Zoe's body screamed to shove back, to explode, to end it, but all that came out was a whisper. She was done. Then her phone buzzed, a tiny vibration, a lifeline. Marcus Carter, her father. She answered, forcing a voice steady, saying, "Hey?" His voice came through distant but worn, asking if she was all right and saying she sounded tired. Zoe slid down the wall, hiding her face in her hair, insisting she was fine, just school stuff, nothing she couldn't handle. There was a pause, the kind that meant he heard the lie, and he offered to come home. Her eyes burned. She painted her voice bright like a mask, telling him not to be silly, promising she'd ace her quiz, telling him to do his job while she did hers. Silence, then softer words, pride wrapped in love. She hung up before the tears could betray her. Tyler's voice drifted after her like smoke, saying her dad wasn't saving her. Ava tossed the wig onto Zoe's bag like tagging property and walked away laughing, protected and untouched. Zoe cleaned every last photo, every scrap, stuffing them deep into her bag, not because she wanted them, but because she wouldn't leave bait behind for the next person to step into the trap. Maybe tomorrow she'd throw them out. Maybe tomorrow she'd be allowed to be a kid again. Heels clicked on tile. Authority arrived before the person. Elena Whitaker stepped in with sharp eyes and a mouth set like a courtroom line. Taking in the mess, the wig, Zoe's clenched fists. For one fragile second, Zoe braced for justice. Instead, Elena smiled at Tyler and Ava lingering by, praising their creativity and talking about growth and development, as if cruelty were curriculum. Then she turned to Zoe, honey freezing into ice, telling her she should be grateful for the attention during her awkward phase. Zoe said nothing. She knew better than to argue with someone who could turn kindness into a weapon and then write you up for attitude. As Elena ushered them away, she leaned close enough for her words to land like a signature at the bottom of a sentence Zoe didn't get to appeal, whispering that they'd talk soon about Zoe's progress because she had big plans. The chill lingered after they were gone. Zoe stood alone, hands shaking, not from fear, but from clarity. This wasn't ordinary school cruelty. It was personal, calculated, and something bigger was coming, pressure building behind a wall the whole school would pretend not to see until it finally collapsed.
Elena Whitaker sat alone at her desk. The office lights dimmed as if darkness could soften the truth. It didn't. The sharp lines in her face were carved by years of restraint, not age. Her fingers tacked against a stack of essays, eyes moving without reading. Liberty High had taught her every mask students wore: the clown, the prince, the obedient favorite, the quiet one who survived by disappearing. Tonight, she wasn't grading students. She was grading herself. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tyler Reed. Short, confident. "It's done. Want proof?" Elena didn't respond. She never needed to. Tyler and Ava Morrison lived for approval. They always delivered. She had chosen them carefully. Not the cruelest, just the most obedient. Hungry, eager to please. Watching them felt like watching her younger self years ago, clawing for relevance, terrified of being invisible. That desperation had shaped her life. She closed her eyes and the memory surfaced without mercy. There had been a man once, a black officer, disciplined, brilliant. His uniform fit him like truth. His presence drew her in. His mind hooked her deeper. For a time she believed she mattered, until the day he decided she was a risk he couldn't afford, not under the military scrutiny, not in a world always watching. He told her she was brilliant, but he couldn't carry her and his career. She watched him walk away with medals catching the light, while she stayed behind, another woman in another hallway, another name that never made history. From that moment on, Elena made a vow that felt like survival. She would never be outshone by anyone in uniform again, especially not someone who looked like him. Her eyes drifted to the photograph pinned above her desk. Zoe Carter, smiling beside Marcus Carter, Liberty High's perfect display family, donor-friendly, press-ready. Marcus's record was whispered about like scripture, Navy SEAL, decorated, hero. And Zoe, polite, intelligent, never disruptive, never invisible. Elena's mouth curved, cold and precise. She'd seen that look before, in men who thought discipline made them unbreakable. In her mind, Zoe wasn't just a student, she was a soldier's child, a symbol, a reminder. Elena didn't want simple embarrassment. She wanted Zoe cornered into a choice that would rot from the inside. She wanted betrayal to come from the place Zoe trusted most, because that was the real lesson. Pride always has a cost. This was never about school rules. It was about control. Elena designed her lessons like pressure tests: push, wait, escalate. She forced her targets to choose between dignity and belonging, silence and survival. She wanted Zoe to doubt whether her father's world had ever been built for people like them, or whether it was just another stage where girls learned their place. She opened her planner and wrote with clinical neatness: Thanksgiving Assembly, theme, gratitude, public display. She circled the date, already directing the scene in her mind. Zoe on stage, forced to thank her classmates, forced to smile while Marcus watched. Elena wanted Zoe to admit out loud that medals couldn't protect her, that pride was a lie, that Liberty High decided who stood tall. In Elena's warped logic, it wasn't cruelty, it was a reckoning. Zoe's quiet strength sharpened Elena's resentment, the way the girl stood like she belonged, like she didn't need permission to exist. Elena had spent her life shrinking ambition behind politeness, careful never to threaten anyone, and here was Zoe moving through the world with infuriating safety. Elena hated that safety. She told herself she was teaching, preparing Zoe for reality. Let her learn the way I learned. The lie tasted convincing. Her phone buzzed again. Tyler, this time less confident. You're sure she'll crack? She's tougher than the others. For a brief moment, barely a flicker, doubt surfaced. Was Zoe different? Was Marcus Carter more than just another uniformed man Elena had misjudged? Elena crushed the thought. She typed back, controlled and final. She will. Keep the pressure steady. People always break when you hit where it hurts most. She set the phone down like a gavel. Everything was in place. Tyler and Ava would continue the humiliation, slow and surgical. Elena would oversee the final act, smiling, documenting, calling it character building while tightening the vice. Thanksgiving was coming, and Elena Whitaker had already written the scene where Zoe Carter would be humiliated on cue, right in front of the man Elena wanted to punish without ever touching. She didn't realize yet that she had misjudged one thing. This wasn't just a performance, it was a fuse, and Elena was standing closest to the blast.
Marcus Carter waited near the airport gate, his uniform folded and hidden inside a battered duffel, as if distance alone could separate duty from instinct. Around him, travelers moved with holiday urgency, children tugging suitcases, couples arguing over seats, laughter spilling into the terminal air. Marcus barely noticed. His mind wasn't tracking flight numbers or delays. It was locked on a single voice, replaying in his head. He checked his phone again, third time in 10 minutes. Old messages from Zoe, ordinary words, casual replies. He kept replaying their last call, the half-second pause before she said she was fine. "Everything's good, Dad. Don't worry about me."
It had sounded brave. Zoe had always been like that, strongest when she thought he needed her to be. Marcus had spent his life learning to read terrain, silence, tone. His instincts didn't miss much, and right now, every one of them was screaming. He reached into the duffel and pulled out a small velvet box. The hinge opened with a soft click. Inside lay the trident, polished, heavy, unforgiving. Not a decoration, not a story prop. Something he had earned in places he never described, for reasons he never put into words. He had planned to give it to Zoe on Thanksgiving, at home, quietly, make a joke about how ugly it looked up close, let her roll her eyes, let her know he saw the fight she carried every day just to stand tall. That plan died with one phone call. Marcus closed the box and felt his chest tighten. He wasn't about to gamble with his daughter's safety, not for tradition, not for orders, not for anyone. The terminal buzzed louder, but it all felt distant, like noise through water. His phone rang. A familiar voice came through, sharp, clipped, the way operators spoke when time mattered. Change of plans. Don't come to base. They're moving fast. You're exposed. Marcus stepped out of the crowd, lowering his voice. Is this about Elena Whitaker's people? The answer came immediately. Yeah, an audit kicked up dirt on a councilman tied to Liberty High's funding, military support funds, missing money, someone inside the school feeding him information. Keep your head down, the voice warned. Eyes on the kid. Marcus's jaw tightened. This wasn't routine bureaucracy. The same man pulling strings at Zoe's school was now under federal scrutiny, and Elena Whitaker was caught somewhere in that web. Suddenly, Marcus understood something he hadn't wanted to admit. His absence hadn't just been missed birthdays and school events. His job had made him a threat, and threats attract pressure. Which meant Zoe was at risk, not just from kids who needed an audience, but from adults who used institutions like weapons, from people who saw a daughter as leverage. Marcus didn't hesitate. He called the airline, changed his destination, booked the first flight toward Liberty High. The trident went back into his pocket, heavier now. As he confirmed the ticket, a harder thought hit him. Maybe Zoe's silence wasn't about protecting him. Maybe she understood more than he'd given her credit for. Maybe she'd been fighting her own battles while he was too far away to see the cost. Guilt flashed, sharp and unwelcome, but there was no time to sit with it. He texted back one line, "Cover me, going in quiet." The reply came instantly, "Watch your back, they don't fight fair." His boots hit the ground in the next city over. Rental car, radio low, eyes on the mirrors. As Marcus drove, his mind cataloged everything Zoe had ever said about school, names she mentioned too carefully, teachers she avoided talking about, the way she always minimized her own discomfort. He pictured her walking those halls alone, shoulders squared, trying to prove she could handle it. He wanted to believe she could, but the dread in his chest wouldn't loosen. Marcus rehearsed what he'd say when he saw her, weighing every word. He had never been the kind of father who made promises he couldn't keep. He knew how fast things fell apart, how easily safe became fiction. What mattered wasn't pretending nothing was wrong. What mattered was making sure Zoe knew she wasn't fighting alone anymore. The trident pressed against his leg with every mile, not just metal, a promise. You're stronger than you know, he practiced silently, but you don't have to be strong by yourself. He repeated it until it stopped sounding like a speech and started sounding like truth. The school came into view. Marcus parked, heart pounding in a way combat never produced. He scanned the grounds, entries, exits, sight lines, habit, muscle memory, but nothing prepared him for what might be waiting inside. This wasn't about confrontation. It was about presence, about showing Zoe that distance and duty would never outrank her. He walked toward the doors, ignoring the looks from students who clocked the posture before they saw the face. His friend's warning echoed again. They played dirty. Marcus Carter was ready for that. He had spent his life fighting on other people's terrain. He learned the real war wasn't about firepower. It was about knowing where danger hid and who it tried to use. His hand tightened around the metal in his pocket. Mission simple. Find Zoe.
bring her home, end the games before anyone else tried to turn his daughter into a pawn.
The noise in the room barely registered at first. Marcus Carter pushed the door open, expecting the familiar chaos of a school assembly. Chairs scraping, whispers rising and falling, the dull hum of forced attention. Then his body went cold. Zoe was on her knees at the front of the room, shoulders trembling, her back to the class. Elena Whitaker sat perched on the teacher's desk like a judge on a throne, legs stretched out, one boot planted apart on Zoe's shoulder. Her finger cut the air, stopping inches from Zoe's face, close enough to claim ownership. This wasn't discipline, it was a public breaking. "Say it," Elena demanded, her voice clean and sharp as it echoed through the room. "Tell everyone how grateful you are for this lesson. Tell them your father's medals don't make you above humility." Tyler Reed and Ava Morrison flanked the crowd, smug and satisfied, watching Zoe fold inward under the weight of 100 eyes. Marcus's grip loosened inside his jacket. The velvet box slipped free. Metal struck the floor with a sound far too loud for something so small. Elena didn't look up. Her focus was locked on Zoe, on crushing something she could never build. Zoe pressed her forehead to her hands, breathing through the burn in her knees and the heat crawling up her spine. Elena's voice sharpened. "Your father made choices. He left. And you?" Ava flicked a crumpled paper toward Zoe's feet. Tyler snickered. "You should thank me for showing you the truth," Elena continued. "Thank your friends for reminding you where you stand." Zoe closed her eyes. Her lips trembled. The word barely escaped. "Thank you." "Louder," Elena snapped. Zoe swallowed, her voice cracking, but she obeyed. "Thank you." The room froze. Some students stared in shock. Others smirked. No one moved. That was when Marcus stepped forward. Elena straightened, but kept her boot planted. "This is a lesson, Mr. Carter," she said coolly. "If you'd taught her humility, I wouldn't have to do it for you." Marcus's jaw locked. His eyes never left Zoe. "Get your foot off my daughter." Elena smiled thinly. "You're late. She needed to learn what happens when pride goes unchecked." Marcus didn't argue. He walked forward slowly, every step deliberate, every eye tracking him. He knelt, picked up the medal from the floor, and pressed it gently into Zoe's shaking hand. "You don't have to kneel for anyone," he said softly. Elena let her boot fall, but she didn't retreat. "You want to protect her from life," she sneered. "That's not how the world works." Zoe gripped her father's hand, using his strength to stand. Marcus lifted his gaze past Elena toward the corner of the room. A red light blinked. The camera. Elena followed his eyes. For a split second, calculation flickered across her face. Then she masked it with bravado. "Go ahead, make a scene. Show your daughter what happens when you challenge authority." Marcus turned to the students, his voice low, steady, impossible to ignore. "You all saw what happened here. Remember it." "Don't threaten me," Elena snapped. "The school board knows who I am." Marcus faced her fully now, expression flat, controlled. "You just made a mistake you can't erase," he said. "You turned your pain into punishment. This isn't your battlefield." Silence crushed the room. Ava shifted, uncertainty flashing across her face. Tyler's smirk collapsed. Zoe wiped her cheek and refused to look away from Elena. Marcus wrapped an arm around Zoe's shoulders. "We're done here." Elena scoffed. "You think you're untouchable because of your record? That uniform doesn't mean anything to me." Marcus met her stare. "This isn't about the uniform. It's about dignity. You lost yours today." He guided Zoe toward the door, then paused at the threshold and looked back once. "Everyone here saw who you really are." Elena lifted her chin, trying to reclaim control, but the room had already shifted. Whispers spread, phones came out. Some students stared at the floor, shamed. Marcus's calm was more frightening than rage. He left without another word, holding Zoe close as they passed Tyler and Ava.
Tyler dropped his eyes. Ava stepped aside. In the hallway, Marcus kept his voice steady. "I'm here now. This ends today." Zoe squeezed his hand. "I wanted to fight back, Dad. I couldn't." Marcus stopped and looked at her. "You did. You survived. That's more than enough." His gaze dropped to the metal in her palm. "This is yours, not because of me, because you endured." Zoe nodded. The pain was still there, but so was something else. Quiet, stubborn pride. Elena Whitaker thought she was in control. She had forgotten who was watching. And in that room with cameras blinking and silence turning against her, she had awakened something she could no longer contain.
Zoe Carter gripped her father's hand as they stepped into the parking lot. The air felt heavier out here, as if the building behind them had exhaled something poisonous that still clung to her skin. Marcus Carter didn't rush. His calm settled around her like armor, steadying her in a way she hadn't felt in weeks. He didn't ask why she hadn't called for help or why she'd endured everything in silence. He unlocked the car, slid into the driver's seat, and waited until Zoe settled beside him. Only then did he turn, his voice gentle but precise. "Don't tell me what happened," he said. "Tell me what you know." Zoe hesitated, then reached into her backpack and pulled out a small, battered notebook. Its corners were soft from use, the cover creased and stained. She handed it to him with hands that trembled, not from fear now, but from relief. Marcus flipped through the pages. Dates, names, shorthand notes, symbols, codes, the kind of language you build when you're living inside something and can't afford to write plainly. Cleaning duty, purification ritual, times marked in the margins, hours Elena Whitaker forced her to scrub bathrooms alone. Gratitude lesson, public shame, observe reactions. Every cruel task labeled, every humiliation archived, preserved by someone who understood instinctively that memory alone could be erased. "If I wrote it like a story," Zoe said quietly, "maybe it wouldn't just be pain. Maybe it would show what they're really doing." Marcus felt a tight pull in his chest. He'd known soldiers who kept sloppier records under live fire. "You're telling the truth in your own language," he said. "That's more than most people dare." Zoe shrugged, eyes on the dashboard. "If this ever comes out," she added, "I want it clear. This isn't just about one kid. Elena does it because she can. Tyler and Ava go along because it's safe for them." Marcus nodded, his mind already sorting patterns, mapping systems. "You see it," he said. "It's not random." "It's not," Zoe replied. "She sets everyone up, makes it look like help, but it's control. I got picked because I wouldn't pretend." Marcus closed the notebook and let its weight settle in his palm. Then he met her eyes. "You're not powerless," he said. "Not anymore." He reached into the center console and handed her an old phone. No case, no markings. "This doesn't have your name on it. It's not connected to anything. It records all day if you keep it charged. Carry it. Don't tell anyone." Zoe blinked. "You want me to go back?" "You'll act normal," Marcus said. "She won't suspect a thing. We're not fighting her with fists." His voice lowered. "We're fighting with the one thing people like her can't survive." "Evidence," Zoe said. She took the phone and tucked it into a hidden pocket. A spark lit behind her fear, something sharp and alive. "You're turning me into a spy." Marcus's mouth twitched. "You already are. You just didn't know it." "What if she finds out?" Zoe asked. "She won't," Marcus said immediately. "And if she does, I'm right behind you. This isn't just about stopping her for you. It's about every kid she's hurt, every lesson she twisted." The word mission settled between them without being spoken. Zoe's pain, useless for so long, suddenly had a direction, purpose. She could feel the ground shifting, the story changing. "What if I freeze?" "You won't," Marcus said. "You survived this far. Now you're fighting back." He started the car but didn't pull away. "We're not alone in this. You're not alone." He handed the notebook back to her.
Hide this. Never bring it to school again. Keep your head down. The rest, leave to me." Zoe nodded. She understood the risk, but for the first time in months, she didn't feel like prey. She felt like an agent with a plan. "What do I do if she corners me again?" "You record," Marcus said. "You keep her talking. Don't try to win. Just last long enough." Zoe stared out the window as students streamed from the building, lives resuming as if nothing seismic had happened inside. She wondered how many of them carried their own notebooks, how many truths stayed locked behind polite silence. Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "You're not her victim anymore," he said. "You're the one who ends this." Zoe opened the door, squared her shoulders, and walked back toward the school. Marcus stayed in the car, eyes fixed on the building, his mind already assembling calls to make, records to pull, allies to contact. Elena Whitaker had always played by her own rules. Now she was up against someone who knew how to fight in the shadows. Zoe disappeared into the crowd, just another student in a sea of uniforms, but this time she carried more than scars. She carried a way out.
Zoe Carter entered the history classroom with her back straight and her phone buried deep inside her jacket, the recorder already running. The room buzzed with low chatter as students slid into their seats, backpacks thumping, chairs scraping. Elena Whitaker stood at the front, arms folded, eyes sweeping the room with practiced authority until they landed on Zoe. A smile appeared, thin and calculated, never reaching her eyes. "Let's see who came prepared today," Elena announced. "Zoe, you're first." Zoe rose slowly, every movement deliberate. Elena tapped her fingers on the desk, savoring the pause. "Explain the core organizations behind Black civil rights efforts here. Names, structure, impact. Don't skip details." Zoe answered calmly. She listed community leaders, historical milestones, local groups that had shaped generations. Her voice stayed clear, precise. A few students looked impressed. Others stared at the clock. With every correct answer, Elena's expression tightened. Mid-sentence, Elena cut her off with a dramatic sigh. "So that's it?" Elena said. "You reduce our legacy to a list of facts. No respect, no understanding." She blinked twice, inhaled sharply, and her eyes filled on cue. "I try so hard with you, Zoe. I want so much for you, and every time you speak, I feel like I've failed." The performance was seamless, years of practice wrapped in a trembling voice. She turned to the class, voice breaking. "Why do you push me away when I only want to help?" Tyler Reed glanced at Ava Morrison. Elena pressed on, louder now. "You don't know how painful it is to watch someone throw away every chance they're given. I just wanted to see progress." Zoe met her gaze and didn't flinch. "You asked me to answer," she said evenly. "I did. That isn't disrespect." Elena's tone hardened beneath the tears. "You never consider how your words affect me. Do you even care how you make me feel?" Mascara ran just enough to sell the moment. She covered her face, shoulders shaking. "I give, and this is how you repay me?" Zoe recognized the trap. Elena needed an audience. She needed a villain. She waved a hand. "Tyler, Ava, help me! I can't do this alone." Tyler stood, walked to Zoe's desk, and kicked her books to the floor. Ava followed, stepping on Zoe's notes, grinding them into the tile. "If you cared," Ava sneered, "you'd treat your teacher better." Elena sobbed softly. "See what you've caused, Zoe? Even your classmates don't understand you anymore." Zoe knelt, gathering her books. Her hands trembled, but her face stayed blank. The phone kept recording. Every insult, every staged sniffle, every accusation. Elena regained her composure, dabbed her eyes, and looked at Zoe with rehearsed concern.
I worry about your future, she said gently, for the room, not for Zoe. Your father can't save you from your own choices. All I wanted was for you to see me as someone on your side. Why do you fight me? You're not on my side, Zoe said. Elena flinched, then turned to the class. You hear that? This is what I deal with. Disrespect, constant hostility. I'm only human. Students shifted in their seats, some uncomfortable, some amused. Zoe stayed silent. She understood now. Elena wasn't teaching. She was building a record, a performance curated for administrators, for the councilman who shielded her, proof that she was the victim of a difficult student. Zoe let the silence work. The more she gave Elena nothing, the more Elena strained to provoke her. I hope you all see how hard I try, Elena said, voice quavering. Maybe one day you'll appreciate it. Until then, some people have to learn the hard way. Her eyes flicked to Zoe, the mask slipping for a heartbeat, pure anger, before snapping back into place. The bell rang. No resolution, just a thick, sour quiet as chairs scraped and students filed out. Zoe packed her ruined notes, expressionless, mind racing. Elena's tears had fooled adults before. They might sway a review if complaints ever reached the council. But this time the entire act was preserved, from the first baited question to the last veiled threat. Zoe stepped into the hallway, resolve settling in her chest. This would take more than a classroom performance to bring Elena down. But now there was a record and someone who knew how to use it.
The school after hours felt like a different country, stripped of daylight noise and excuses. Marcus Carter sat in his car at the edge of the near-empty lot, engine idling, eyes tracking every shadow that moved. His phone was pressed to his ear. Zoe's voice came through, steady but alert. You sure this is safe? He answered without hesitation. We're not breaking rules. I'm just talking to an old friend. He ended the call, stepped out, and moved toward the administrative building with purpose. A badge from a past assignment rested discreetly inside his jacket, an old habit, an old key. Doors opened faster when people believed you still belonged to the system. The night guard barely slowed him. A brief explanation about retrieving archived service records was enough. Marcus passed through silent hallways, lights humming, floors freshly waxed. His mind worked fast, stitching together Zoe's notes and the coded references in her journal. Every thread led back to Elena Whitaker. Yet one thing didn't fit. The cruelty wasn't opportunistic. It was deliberate, personal, a vendetta that reached beyond Zoe. He found Carla Trent, a secretary who'd worked with Whitaker years earlier. Marcus didn't circle. I'm looking for a file Whitaker handled at Jefferson High, he said. There was a complaint, misuse of funds, signatures. Carla's eyes tightened. That's not a story people like to reopen. Marcus met her gaze. My daughter is being punished for what happened back then. I need the truth. The name did it. Lauren Harper Carter, Zoe's mother, the late FBI agent. Carla's guard dropped a fraction. Lauren warned us, she said quietly. She said Whitaker was dangerous, that someone up the chain was skimming from charity accounts. Carla swallowed. Lauren got too close. The investigation died when she did. Marcus felt his pulse hammer. Whitaker forged my wife's signature. Carla nodded. Never proven, but there were whispers. Files vanished. Lauren's notes disappeared. Some blamed the board. Others said Whitaker did it to save her job. Marcus pressed once more. Is there anything left? Carla hesitated, then reached into a cabinet and pulled out an old manila folder buried beneath stacks. You didn't get this from me. Inside were copies, grant forms, spending requests, and at the bottom, a signature that looked right to the untrained eye. To Marcus, it was wrong. The tail on the H ran too long. Beneath it lay a faded photo. Lauren smiling with a scholarship check. Whitaker standing behind her, smile stiff and rehearsed.
Anger rose, clean and controlled. This was what Whitaker had been hiding. She hadn't just hated Lauren for investigating. She blamed her for losing everything. Marcus photographed the forged signature and the picture, sent them to Zoe. The reply came instantly. "That's it, Dad. She's been after us because of Mom. She wanted to erase her name, and now she's using me to finish it." Marcus's jaw set. "Not anymore. We have what we need." This wasn't a grudge. It was a cover-up. Whitaker's cruelty wasn't schoolyard malice. It was revenge, planned, sustained, inherited. Zoe had never been just a student. She was the last loose end of a secret that cost a woman her life and nearly destroyed a family. Marcus returned the folder to Carla, thanked her without words, and left as the cleaning crew began their rounds. Outside, he called Zoe again. "Tomorrow, don't take the bait. Keep recording. She'll push harder, but we're close." "I'm ready," Zoe said. "I want her to know she didn't win." Pride and anger mixed in Marcus's chest. "You're not just my daughter. You're Lauren's legacy. That's something she can't take." The plan sharpened. The evidence would go to the right authorities, but only after Whitaker revealed herself fully. One more act, one unmistakable slip, something even the councilman shielding her couldn't ignore. "What if she tries something worse?" Zoe asked, her voice low but steady. Marcus answered without heat. "Then I'll be there, and this time she won't walk away with a story she can twist." The night pressed in as he drove, mind mapping every angle. Whitaker thought she was cleaning up the past. She'd underestimated the one family willing to drag it into the light. Tomorrow, Zoe would face her again.
The air in the gym felt stale, heavy with sweat and old echoes that never quite left. Zoe Carter waited near the benches, her face calm even as her stomach twisted. Footsteps cut sharp across the floor behind her. Elena Whitaker's voice followed, smooth on the surface, cold underneath. "Zoe, over here. Today's lesson is about resilience. I want to see how tough you really are." Tyler Reed and Ava Morrison hovered nearby, exchanging glances, caught between amusement and unease, unsure whether this was still a game. Elena tossed a jump rope at Zoe's feet. "You'll run sprints until I say stop. That's how growth happens, through pain." Zoe nodded, already seeing the shape of what was coming. She pushed through the drills, breath measured, muscles burning, refusing Elena the satisfaction of a stumble. The demands escalated anyway. When Zoe slowed, Elena snapped, "Not good enough, again." Ava echoed the command with a grin that didn't quite land. "Don't quit, heroes, kid." Zoe bit down, found her rhythm, felt the phone hidden at her waistband hum with purpose as it recorded every word, every inflection, every slip. Elena pulled Tyler closer. Spot her on wall sets, make sure she doesn't cheat. Zoe leaned back against the wall, legs screaming. Elena watched with narrowed eyes. "You think toughness is enough? It isn't. You need consequences." She stepped closer, dropped her voice so only Zoe could hear. "Nobody cares if you're hurting. Don't embarrass yourself." Zoe's arms shook, but she didn't break. She counted breaths. She counted seconds. She stayed upright. 10 push-ups, now," Elena said from behind her. "If you can't do it, maybe you're not who you pretend to be." Zoe dropped to the mat, knuckles biting into rubber, pushed through the pain. Elena knelt beside her and whispered, "Your father isn't here to save you. Maybe that's why you're always angry." The words were bait, sharpened to cut deep. Zoe finished the set anyway, jaw locked, eyes forward. Elena signaled to Tyler, "Medicine ball." The ball thudded into Zoe's hands. "Against the wall, hard. Show me you're not weak." Zoe slammed it, arms stinging. Elena stepped into her path and blocked her return. "You still don't get it. Pain is supposed to teach you something." Her hand pressed into Zoe's shoulder and shoved. Zoe stumbled. Her head struck the wall. A sharp flash. The old scar on her jaw split open, blood tracing a thin line down her chin. Elena's face held a quiet satisfaction. "That's what happens to the proud," she announced. Ava laughed, then looked away, unsettled by the sound of bone meeting concrete. Elena raised her voice. "Look at her, still pretending she's better than the rest of us." Zoe swallowed the heat rising in her chest and steadied herself. "Don't fight back," Marcus had said. "Record, survive." Elena prowled closer. "Why aren't you crying? Afraid someone will see you're not invincible?" Zoe wiped the blood from her chin. "I'm not here to prove anything to you." "You're just like your father, snarl, all pride, no substance." She turned to Tyler and Ava. "This is what happens when people forget their place." While their attention drifted, Zoe slipped a small vial from her pocket and dabbed invisible ink along the fresh cut, masking the motion with her sleeve. The ink would bloom under a specific light, one Marcus had waiting at home. Proof. Not an accident, not a drill gone wrong. Elena waved her off. "Clean up. Wash your face. Try not to bleed on the floor. We all live with the consequences of our choices." Zoe headed for the locker room, each step throbbing, her mind razor sharp. In the mirror, she barely recognized herself, jaw smeared, eyes steady. She pressed the phone to her lips and whispered, "Got it, Dad." The recording caught her voice and the chaos before it. She sent a quick message, "Evidence secured. It's on the ink." She left the gym with her head high, denying Elena the collapse she wanted. Tyler and Ava lingered behind, silent now, the weight of what they'd seen settling in. Tyler stared at the floor. Ava rubbed her arms as if cold. Elena stayed, convinced she'd won, unaware her victory rested on a lie. Zoe had done more than endure. She had trapped her tormentor inside her own method. Now Marcus had what he needed to push the investigation forward. Zoe's body ached, but her spirit didn't bend. That night, Zoe handed Marcus everything: the audio files, the ink-marked shirt sealed in plastic, the battered notebook written in code. Marcus listened, studied, assembled the pieces with a patience forged elsewhere. He played the recording twice, once with his eyes closed, once while watching Zoe's hands tremble as she held the mug he'd given her. "This ends now," he told her quietly. "You did your part. Let me do mine." After Zoe fell asleep, exhaustion finally pulling her under, Marcus stayed awake. He spread documents across the table, cross-referenced timestamps, matched Elena's words to policy violations, matched the injury to the recorded shove. He made calls, careful ones, to people who understood evidence and to people who understood leverage. He drafted a timeline that left no room for interpretation. The story wasn't about a tough lesson or a sensitive student. It was about abuse of authority, retaliation, and a pattern too clean to be a coincidence. Near dawn, Marcus stepped outside and watched the sky lighten. He knew what came next wouldn't be quiet. There would be denials, allies closing ranks, a counter-story designed to confuse. He welcomed it, because this time the truth was louder. By morning, the light would make the ink speak, and the recording would speak for itself. The real fight wouldn't stay in the shadows. It would move into the open, where the people who enabled this cruelty would finally have to answer, and where a girl who refused to break would no longer stand alone.
The next morning, the boardroom felt airless, every chair filled by men and women who had perfected the art of looking away. Years of silence pressed into the walls. Elena Whitaker sat at the long table with her chin lifted, authority worn like armor, convinced the numbers still favored her and that the councilman would do what he always did. When Marcus Carter entered, the temperature dropped. Elena didn't wait. She stood at once, voice loud, righteous, practiced. "This is an emergency hearing," she declared. "Marcus Carter has abused his status, threatened school staff, and interfered in administrative matters. I formally request his immediate suspension from campus grounds." The councilman nodded without hesitation. "I support that request." Marcus didn't react. His hands stayed flat on the table. His eyes never left Elena.
The superintendent cleared his throat and asked if he had a statement. Marcus rose slowly. "I do," he said, calm and precise, "but not as a Navy SEAL. I'm here as the husband of Lauren Harper Carter, an FBI agent whose death was never solved." The room went still. A few faces drained of color. Someone shifted in their seat. Elena's smile faltered, then hardened. "This is a school matter," Elena snapped, "not a federal investigation. Let's stay focused on the accusations." Marcus opened a thick file and slid it forward. "These are not accusations," he said evenly. "They're documents, forged signatures, altered grant requests, financial records, emails tying Elena Whitaker directly to the councilman's private accounts." He tapped one page. "Every document here is signed, except this one. This signature is a forgery, my wife's." A ripple of disbelief moved through the room. The councilman scoffed too loudly. "That's absurd. If any of this were real, authorities would have handled it." Marcus met his eyes. "They are. You may want to answer your phone." The ring cut through the room. The councilman hesitated, then answered. "Yes, this is he." A pause. His face drained. "What investigation?" Another pause. I have nothing to hide." Elena leaned forward, desperation creeping into her voice. "He's lying. He fabricated those records to protect himself. He's trying to destroy this board." Marcus waited until the call ended. The councilman lowered his phone, sweat breaking at his temples. "There is an active FBI investigation into your office," Marcus said. "Subpoenas have been issued for your emails and bank records. Anything said here is now on the record." The superintendent turned to Elena. "Ms. Whitaker, can you respond to these documents?" Elena swallowed, voice brittle. "I did what I was told. I was under pressure. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." Marcus's tone sharpened. "You bullied children, you falsified records, and you targeted my daughter out of personal revenge. That isn't discipline. That is abuse." Silence thickened. Board members whispered, chairs edging away. In the back of the room, Tyler Reed and Ava Morrison sat rigid, faces pale. The councilman tried to recover. "There is no proof he didn't fabricate." "Ask the FBI," Marcus cut in, colder now. "The originals are with them. I have nothing left to lose. You do. Lauren trusted this system. It failed her. I trust evidence." Elena's shoulders sagged. The room turned against her. "You want a confession?" she said hoarsely. "Fine. I forged the signature. I did it to save my job. I thought I could control the fallout." Her voice cracked. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt." Marcus didn't soften. "My daughter will heal. Others will heal. You will answer for what you did. This isn't about punishment. It's about accountability." Security entered. The councilman protested, but no one listened. Elena was escorted out, eyes fixed forward as former allies looked away. Marcus watched without triumph, only a long, controlled exhale. As the door closed, the room stayed silent, complicity echoing in the space she left behind. Marcus gathered his files and said quietly, "This won't fix everything, but it's a start." He turned and walked out, where Zoe Carter waited in the hallway. Their eyes met, tired, steady, unbroken. For once, the truth had been spoken out loud, and no one who had carried it alone would have to anymore.
The day after the board meeting, the hallways throbbed with a nervous energy the school had never known. News moved faster than the bells. Students gathered in tight knots, whispers sharp, eyes flicking between teachers and classmates, as if the building itself might answer back. The familiar rhythm was broken. Down the main corridor, 2 uniformed officers escorted Elena Whitaker, her wrists restrained, posture rigid with a pride that refused fold. Every locker, every doorway became an audience. Elena's voice cut through the silence, loud and brittle. "This isn't justice. I'm the only one who ever cared about your futures. You let one family destroy everything I built." She jerked against the officers, searching faces for loyalty, for rescue. None came.
Marcus Carter stood apart, back straight, hands folded calmly in front of him. He didn't speak. He didn't flinch as Lena hurled her accusations. "You think you're a hero," she shouted, twisting toward him. "You ruined me, all for your perfect daughter." The words fell flat, swallowed by the distance between them. The officers urged her forward. She craned her neck and yelled one last time, "You'll see! This school will rot without me!" Marcus's silence answered her better than any argument could. He didn't offer her the dignity of a response. His presence was a wall, steady, uninterested in her performance. As Elena was marched past the lockers, Tyler Reed and Ava Morrison stood waiting. The swagger they once wore was gone. When their eyes met hers, there was no fear, only something colder. "You taught us to be cruel," Tyler said, just loud enough for her to hear. Ava followed, her words sharp and final. "Now it's your turn to clean up the mess." For a heartbeat, Elena faltered. The mask slipped. Something like pain flashed in her eyes before snapping back into place. The officers didn't slow. Heels echoed down the corridor as the woman who ruled through fear and manipulation was led away, stripped of the power she'd mistaken for permanence. Students parted in silence. Some felt pity, some felt relief. Everyone understood the lesson. Power built on cruelty never lasts. As the doors closed behind her, staff exchanged uneasy glances, wondering how long they had ignored the warning signs. Marcus remained, watching as if expecting the building to exhale. The officers didn't take Elena where she expected. Not a local station, but a military facility, secure and quiet, where questions ran deeper than school budgets and bruised egos. There, officials laid out the evidence, ties to the councilman, leaked information, a network that had profited from silence and the suffering of children. The questions were precise, relentless. Elena understood too late that the game had changed. This wasn't about her job. It was about secrets traded for power. She pleaded for leniency, but the law she'd bent now closed around her. Marcus's connections ensured the investigation would reach far beyond a school district. Back in the halls, Tyler and Ava walked away together, heads lowered, voices hushed. "We let her turn us into people we aren't," Tyler said. Ava nodded. "At least we know now. We can be better." When their eyes met Marcus, they braced for anger. He met their gaze and nodded once. "You made a choice. Make a better one next time." No lecture, no praise. Accountability, delivered plainly. Zoe Carter waited by the side entrance, scanning her father's face, searching for something she couldn't name. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over," he said, "at least this part." Zoe didn't smile, but her steps felt lighter as they walked to the car. Victory hadn't erased the scars. The wounds from Elena's reign would linger. But for the first time, Zoe felt seen, believed, safe. That night at home, Zoe sat holding her mother's photograph. Marcus joined her without speaking, letting the quiet do its work. "You did what she couldn't," he said softly. "You finished what your mom started. That took more courage than any medal." Zoe closed her eyes, tears threatening. "Does it ever really end, Dad?" Marcus shook his head. "Maybe not, but you get to decide how the next chapter begins." The lesson wasn't vengeance, it was rupture, breaking the chain. Elena Whitaker had been removed, but justice meant more than punishment. It meant healing. It meant choosing what came next. Zoe understood the road ahead wouldn't be easy. To honor her mother's legacy, she would have to make peace with the truth about Elena, about the pain, and about her own strength. Justice had changed hands. Now it belonged to those willing to use it with care, not cruelty. The past couldn't be undone, but together, Zoe and Marcus would face whatever followed, stronger for having survived, and awake to the power of choosing better.
Dawn seeped through the blinds in a soft gray wash, touching the living room without urgency. Marcus Carter sat motionless, shoulders bent under the quiet weight of the past few days. Across from him,
Zoe curled into the corner of the couch, the old photograph of her mother resting in her hands. She turned it over and over, tracing the edges of Lauren Harper Carter's smile, the sharp lines of her uniform, searching for something she might have missed when she was younger. Marcus let the silence stretch. It wasn't awkward, it was waiting. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and stripped of ceremony. "You deserve to know why all of this happened, not just the bullying, everything that's followed us for years." He paused, choosing the beginning carefully. "When your mom started investigating the charity fund at her last post, she noticed patterns that didn't make sense. Money disappearing, names showing up where they didn't belong. At first, she thought it was sloppy accounting. Then she realized people wanted her to stop looking." Zoe didn't interrupt. She watched him closely as he continued. "I didn't want to believe it. I thought she was being paranoid, that the pressure was getting to her. I was so wrapped up in my own missions that I missed how alone she felt." His jaw tightened. "She warned me, Zoe. She told me, if anything ever happens to me, follow the money. Trust your gut, not the reports. I brushed it off. I thought nothing could touch us. That was my mistake." Zoe's fingers clenched around the photograph. "Why didn't you ever tell me this?" Marcus looked away, shame flickering across his face. "I wanted to protect you. I didn't want you growing up thinking your mother was a victim." He shook his head slowly. "She wasn't. She was a fighter. But I let my doubts about the system drown out my faith in her. After she died, I kept asking myself if I listened sooner, if she might still be here." His voice cracked, raw with years he hadn't allowed himself to feel. Zoe met his eyes. "Did you ever doubt her?" He answered without hesitation. "Never her loyalty. I doubted the world she was fighting. I wanted to believe the people around us, her colleagues, my own team, were trustworthy. She knew better. She left clues, pieces that only made sense after she was gone. It took losing her, and then almost losing you for me to finally see it." He swallowed. "That's the scar I carry, not the ones from war, the one from not listening to the person I loved most." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zoe said softly, "It wasn't your fault, Dad. No one believed her, did they?" Marcus shook his head. "No one wanted to. It was easier to call her overzealous. I should have stood beside her in action, not just in words. I thought serving my country was enough. I was wrong. Justice doesn't always wear a uniform." Zoe drew a slow breath. "I always thought you and Mom were untouchable, that if I was perfect, nothing bad would happen." Her voice steadied. "But the world doesn't work like that." Marcus moved closer and took her hand. "You don't have to be perfect. None of us are. We're meant to endure, and then we're meant to heal." A tear slipped down Zoe's cheek, but her chin lifted. "I'm tired of carrying all that weight. I just want to live without being afraid of disappointing either of you." Marcus squeezed her hand. "You've never disappointed us. Your mother trusted you to be strong enough to follow the truth she left behind, and you were." Zoe nodded, some of the tightness in her chest finally loosening. "Does it ever get easier?" Marcus answered honestly. "Some days. Other days it hurts just as much. But telling the truth, admitting where we failed, that's how we move forward." She took a deep breath. "I want to live for me, not for someone else's idea of me." A faint smile crossed his face. "That's exactly what your mom wanted." The sun climbed higher, filling the room with a gentler light. Zoe looked once more at the photograph, then at her father. "Thank you for telling me the truth, even when it hurts." Marcus pulled her into a steady, wordless embrace. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, "more than you know." The past would always leave marks, but scars were proof of survival, not failure.
Zoe finally let herself breathe, ready to look ahead without secrets or the burden of being perfect. She wasn't the daughter of legends. She was her own person, shaped by courage, strengthened by truth, and free, at last, to begin healing.
Zoe Carter sat at the far end of the cafeteria, her tray untouched. The room felt muted, as if the echoes of yesterday's chaos still hung in the air. Conversations were hushed. Laughter, when it appeared, sounded unsure of itself. She was halfway through tracing the edge of her fork when two figures stopped across from her table. Tyler Reed stood with his hands buried in his hoodie pockets. Ava Morrison hovered beside him, fingers twisting nervously at her sleeve. Neither sat right away. When they finally took the seats opposite her, the space between them felt heavier than the table itself. Tyler broke the silence first, his voice lower than Zoe had ever heard it.
"We're not here to make excuses. We know what we did was wrong." Ava nodded quickly, eyes downcast. "We went along with her because we were scared, not just of Elena Whitaker, but of what our parents would say if we spoke up. Mine always told me not to draw attention, not to get involved." Tyler swallowed. "My dad works for people tied to the council. He always said the system protects its own, so you don't want to be on the wrong side of it." He looked up then, meeting Zoe's eyes, guilt etched plainly across his face. "That's not a reason. It just made it easier to stay quiet. I'm sorry. For the photos, the wig, all of it." Zoe listened without interrupting. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't rush to fill the silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, deliberate. "Your apologies are for me, and I'll decide if or when I accept them. But your actions aren't just about me. They're about everyone you helped hurt. Words don't fix what happened." Ava's shoulders sagged. "I wish I'd stood up sooner," she said, her voice trembling. "I was terrified of falling behind, of losing everything. I thought if I stayed close to her, she'd protect me." She shook her head. "I didn't realize she was using me to isolate you. She even pushed me to sabotage my own grades. She said if I stayed just behind you, the pressure would stay on you instead of me. I hated it, but I still didn't." The admission left a sharp, uncomfortable silence. Tyler rubbed his face with one hand. "My dad's never going to understand why I have to do this," he said quietly. "But I want to make it right, not just with you, with everyone." Zoe took a slow breath. "If you want to do something real," she said, "sign up for service at the Southside Community Center. The Black Student Leadership Council runs outreach there, after-school tutoring, cleanup days, whatever they need." She met their eyes, one after the other, not to earn forgiveness, but to learn what it means to help instead of harm. Ava nodded immediately. "Yes, whatever it takes." Tyler hesitated and nodded as well. "I'll do it, and I'll tell my dad why." Zoe didn't smile. "It's not enough to say you're sorry. I want to see you show up where you don't have control, where you're not protected by the same people who let this happen. We can't go back, but you get to choose what comes next." They sat with that truth between them. Tyler finally asked, "Is there anything you want from us right now?" Zoe considered it, then shook her head. "No. This isn't about making me feel better. It's about the next kid who gets targeted, about showing that people can change, even if it takes hitting bottom first." Ava reached across the table, her hand trembling. Zoe didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back either. They sat like that for a moment, an uncertain bridge forming, not from shared pain, but shared responsibility. Around them, other students watched without interrupting. Something unspoken was happening, and everyone felt it. Zoe stood, gathering her things. "I need to do something for myself now," she said. "My mother always told me to hold my head high, no matter how many times people try to knock you down." She looked at Tyler and Ava one last time. "I'm done carrying her shame like it's mine." Her voice was steady. "You'll see me around, but I won't be looking back." She walked away lighter than she had arrived. The scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. Forgiveness, she understood now, wasn't something she owed. It was a power she could choose, later or never. Behind her, Tyler and Ava remained seated, absorbing what passed and what still lay ahead. For Zoe, the next step wasn't about victory or revenge. It was about reclaiming her identity, about healing what Elena Whitaker, in silence, had tried to hollow out. The time had come to take back what had been weaponized against her and step into the future on her own terms.
Marcus Carter stood in the hallway outside Lauren's old room, the key resting heavy in his palm. The door hadn't been opened in years. Zoe lingered beside him, fingers twitching at her side, unsure whether she was afraid of what she might find or what she might finally understand. Marcus didn't offer instructions or reassurance. He simply unlocked the door, stepped back, and let her go in first. The room was small and spare, almost monastic. One wall held shelves stacked with dusty binders and faded envelopes, their edges softened by time. On the dresser sat a wooden jewelry box Zoe recognized instantly, the one she'd once opened as a child, heart racing, certain she was trespassing into something sacred. There were no trophies here, no framed diplomas, just ordinary things. A bottle of cheap perfume, a badge worn smooth at the edges, a dog-eared paperback filled with notes scribbled into the margins. Zoe stood still, her pulse loud in her ears, unsure what she was supposed to feel. Marcus crossed the room and opened the jewelry box. From inside, he lifted a thin silver bracelet, tarnished at the clasp. He held it up and let the light catch the metal. "Your mom got this on her first undercover assignment," he said quietly. "She had braces back then. She was the only black agent on her team. They sent her into a high school because nobody noticed the awkward black girl with the nervous smile." His voice softened. "She learned how to disappear when she needed to. That's how she got the job done." Zoe reached out and took the bracelet, her fingers trembling as she traced the tiny nicks and dents etched into the silver. "She never told me any of this," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "She wanted you to believe you could be anything, not just what the world allowed you to be. But she also wanted you to know that hiding isn't living. She hid for the work. She refused to hide who she was." Zoe sat on the edge of the bed, the bracelet still warm in her hand. Marcus placed an old photograph in her lap. Loring stood smiling at the camera, young and radiant, her natural hair loose around her face, braces flashing, the same silver bracelet bright against her wrist. "She hated those braces," Marcus said with a faint laugh. "But she told me once, sometimes you use what they throw at you as a weapon, not a wound. That bracelet reminded her of that." Zoe's throat tightened. "Elena Whitaker mocked me for the same things, the braces, my hair, everything that made me different." Marcus's voice lowered. "Your mom saw herself in you, not because you were the same, but because you had the courage to be seen. That's the part Elena never understood. She tried to turn your difference into a target. Your mother turned hers into armor." Zoe slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It felt cool and solid, like a link across time. "I thought hiding was the only way to survive," she said. "I let them decide what was beautiful, what was strong." Marcus shook his head. "You survived by being yourself, even when it hurt. Your mother never wanted you to be less. Every scar, every sideways look was proof you didn't give in." Zoe smiled through the tears. "She was brave." Marcus squeezed her shoulder. "So are you." She looked again at the photograph, recognizing herself in Lauren's crooked smile, in the wildness of her hair. In that moment, the shame and anger that had followed her for so long loosened their grip. She understood something at last. The things she'd tried hardest to hide were the very things that made her powerful. The cruelty hadn't been about her weakness. It had been fear. Fear of what couldn't be controlled. "I used to hate my smile," Zoe admitted softly, "and my hair. I wanted to disappear." Marcus met her gaze. "Then you would have missed your chance to change things. Your mother didn't change the world by blending in." Zoe studied the bracelet again, the scratches worn into it by years of use. Was she ever scared? Marcus answered without hesitation.
every day. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing what you do next. Zoe slid the bracelet higher on her wrist. I think I'm ready to show people who I am, not for them, for me, the way she wanted. Marcus smiled, pride and sorrow braided together. You're more like her than you know. Zoe moved to the window, letting the sunlight warm her face. She didn't want to hide anymore. She turned back to her father, her voice steady with resolve. I'm going to tell my story for every kid Alina tried to break, for every girl who feels like she has to shrink herself just to survive. Marcus nodded once. She'd be proud of you. I am too. Zoe left Lauren's room changed. The silver bracelet glinted on her wrist, not just an heirloom, but a declaration. Her mother's legacy wasn't only sacrifice, it was defiance, the courage to stand out, to claim difference without shame. Zoe stepped back into the world ready, not as someone running from the past, but as someone willing to shape a future where no one would be forced to hide again.
Zoe Carter waited backstage, her breathing steady for the first time in months. She touched the silver bracelet on her wrist, letting its cool weight anchor her to the ground. It was more than jewelry now. It was proof of what she had reclaimed. When her name was called, she stepped into the light and walked to the microphone, eyes lifting to meet a room filled with classmates, parents, teachers, and strangers. Some faces were open, some guarded, a few already uncomfortable with where this was going. Near the front sat Marcus Carter, posture relaxed, attention absolute. He didn't need to nod. His presence was enough. Off to one side, Tyler Reed and Ava Morrison stood together, tense but visible, no longer hiding, not yet belonging. The room settled into a waiting silence. Zoe began without theatrics. For a long time, I was told that staying quiet would make things easier, that if I let people decide who I was, I'd have less to lose. She paused. I tried that. I tried being invisible. The words landed gently, then stayed. I thought if I kept my head down, the world would leave me alone. It didn't. She let the quiet do its work. Some of you know the rumors, the jokes, the punishments, the way I always seemed to be in trouble for things I didn't do. She didn't name names. She didn't replay scenes. I'm not here to relive the details. I'm here to talk about what comes after. Zoe raised her wrist, the bracelet catching the light. This belonged to my mom. She wore braces. She had hair like mine. She was told she needed to change herself to fit in, to do her job, to survive. A breath. She turned what made her different into something that kept her safe. She taught me that you don't let anyone else's shame become yours. Her voice stayed calm as the truth sharpened. I was forced to clean bathrooms. I was laughed at in front of a class for my teeth and my hair, things I never chose. She didn't flinch. Those weren't just punishments, they were tests. I think of them as self-respect exams, not about breaking me, about seeing if I could hold on to what mattered. She scanned the room. I'm not thankful for the pain. I am thankful I learned this. What people try to use to hurt you can become your reason to keep fighting. And the worst things people say about you are usually about what they're afraid of in themselves. A small, steady smile. I used to be ashamed of my smile. Not anymore. Zoe turned slightly, opening the space beside her. Tyler and Ava hesitated, then stepped forward and joined her on stage. Tyler spoke first, voice rough but clear. I went along because it was easier than pushing back. I let fear decide for me. I was wrong. He swallowed. I'm sorry to Zoe, and to anyone who watched what we did and thought it was normal. Ava followed, hands trembling but eyes steady. I hurt someone because I didn't want to be a target myself. That's not an excuse. She took a breath. We're leaving Liberty. That's not running away. It's a consequence we accept. The room murmured, support here, defensiveness there. But Zoe didn't move. She held the moment without owning it. Their choice isn't about me. It's about starting over the right way. I don't need revenge. I need proof that things can change. Marcus watched from the front row as his daughter claimed the space, not for show, but because she had earned it. Every word carried the weight of lessons paid for. The moderator asked if she wanted to add anything else. Zoe nodded.
My mom used to say the world doesn't need more heroes. It needs more people who can stand up after being knocked down. People who can tell the truth, even when it's ugly. She let her gaze travel the room. That's all I'm trying to do. I hope next time someone here does the same. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause began cautiously, then grew, tentative claps becoming a wave. Tyler and Ava exited with their heads up, not in pride, but in honesty. Zoe walked down to Marcus. He stood and held her in a brief, understanding embrace. Around them, the room buzzed, talk of accountability, of change, of things that had been hidden for too long. Zoe didn't want to be a symbol, but she had become a voice for those who never got to speak. That evening, conversation started where silence used to live. Parents asked harder questions. Teachers looked twice at how discipline and difference intersected in their classrooms. Her story didn't fix everything. It made pretending impossible. As they left, Zoe felt her purpose settle, not as a burden, but as a direction. Marcus knew his work wasn't finished, but for the first time, he saw that the way forward wasn't only through confrontation, it was through healing. Zoe's courage had started something larger than a scandal. It was the beginning of a promise to protect, to acknowledge, to make sure no student ever had to fight alone again.
Marcus Carter sat alone at his desk. For the first time in weeks, the office was quiet. Not the tense quiet of waiting for bad news, but the kind that comes after something irreversible has already happened. Official documents lay scattered across the surface, sealed folders stamped with names that now carried a different weight. Elena Whitaker, the councilman, board members who had believed themselves untouchable. Their grip on the system was broken. Yet Marcus felt no rush of triumph, only a steady, sober calm. He picked up the phone. The call could no longer be delayed. When his commanding officer answered, the voice on the line was clipped and familiar. Marcus didn't dress it up. "Sir, I'm requesting extended leave," he said. "I've fought for my country my whole life, but right now I have to fight for my family. My daughter needs me. I can't give less than everything." The line crackled. Silence stretched, not resistance, but consideration. When his superior finally spoke, the edge softened. "I read the reports. I know what you and Zoe have been through. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't overseas." Marcus exhaled. "This isn't about walking away," he said. "It's about being present. For too long, I thought being a good soldier meant putting the mission first. My family is my mission now." There was no interruption. Instead, something Marcus hadn't expected: solidarity. "You won't be carrying this alone," the officer said. "Your team already stepped up. They volunteered to cover your rotations. No one questioned it. They all said the same thing: let Carter go home." Marcus swallowed hard, emotion rising fast and unfamiliar. "I didn't ask them to do that." The reply came without hesitation. "That's why they did it. You would have done the same." The truth of it settled warm and heavy. For years, Marcus had led by example, pushed hard, demanded excellence, absorbed pain quietly so others wouldn't have to. He'd never noticed how closely those sacrifices had been watched. Now, when his life demanded a different kind of courage, those bonds held firm. He closed his eyes and let the gratitude pass through him. He stood and looked at the uniform hanging by the door. The medals on the wall no longer felt like trophies of war, but markers of a long, exhausting road, proof of endurance. He dialed his second-in-command. "Tell the team I owe them," Marcus said. "I'll be back when I'm needed." The answer was immediate. "You don't owe us anything. Take care of your daughter. That's all any of us would ever ask." Marcus nodded, knowing those words would never appear in any report and mattered more than any commendation. As the hours passed, images replayed in his mind. Zoe on stage, steady and unflinching, her mother's courage alive in her voice. Tyler and Ava choosing honesty over self-preservation, a board forced to confront what it had enabled.
He felt the old scars, not just from combat, but from absence, from birthdays missed, from promises postponed, from words left unsaid. For once, Marcus let himself sit with it. He understood then that the most important service wasn't marked by battle or medals, but by presence, by the choice to stay, to support, to heal. When he returned home, the air felt different. Zoe was setting the table, humming softly, moving with a confidence that hadn't been there before. The kitchen smelled of roasted turkey and mashed potatoes, simple, grounding comforts. No speeches, no declarations of victory. She looked up and grinned. "Dinner's almost ready, Dad. Can you help with the gravy?" Marcus laughed, relief and joy rising together. "That's a mission I can handle." They ate slowly. Zoe talked about her mother, about school, about dreams that had nothing to do with survival. Marcus listened, really listened, aware of how many moments he'd missed before and determined not to lose any more. At one point, Zoe raised her glass. "To second chances," she said, "for you, for me, for everyone who finally decided to change." Marcus lifted his own. "To being here, where it matters." The leave he'd taken wasn't retreat. It was faith, faith in the future, faith in showing up for the people who needed him most. Marcus knew battles would come again in different forms, but for now, peace settled around the table, earned not on a field of war, but in the shelter of home, in shared food, in his daughter's laughter. The Thanksgiving celebration came late, but its meaning arrived exactly when it was needed.
The dining table glowed with the warmth of simple food and unguarded laughter. Nothing elaborate, just what Zoe Carter and her father needed after weeks of strain and noise. It was the first time Zoe had invited friends over since everything at Liberty had unraveled, and the difference was palpable. The faces around the table, students from the community center, a shy neighbor from down the block, her new debate partner, weren't the polished avatars from her old social feeds. They were real. The conversation was unfiltered, the jokes sharp but never cruel. Zoe found herself grinning as one friend cracked a joke about cafeteria pizza that tasted like cardboard diplomacy. Marcus Carter leaned back, teasing Zoe about her legendary cleaning skills, while someone else tried to get her to admit exactly how many fake wigs she'd tossed during the worst weeks. Zoe took it all in, aware of how rare this felt. Safe in her own home, no calculations about how she looked or sounded, no fear that every word might be turned into a weapon. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't bracing for impact. There was a new lightness between father and daughter. Marcus wasn't hovering, he was present, listening, letting Zoe take the lead, trusting her with the spotlight. The old tension had eased into a shared understanding. Zoe told one of her bathroom stories, the day Ava dared her to wear a rainbow wig to math class, and how she'd turned the dare into a joke so ridiculous even the teachers laughed. She didn't soften the pain, but she refused to let it win. The table erupted. Marcus shook his head, pride and relief plain on his face. He saw it then. Zoe had stopped waiting for disappointment. She wasn't hiding parts of herself to keep him comfortable anymore. She'd fought her battles. Now she could laugh at them. Proof that the wound Elena Whitaker tried to carve into her spirit hadn't taken root. A friend said quietly, "You didn't just survive. You changed things for all of us." Zoe shrugged, but her eyes shone. "I didn't do it alone," she said. "None of us do." Marcus stood and lifted his glass. The room fell quiet. He didn't mention lawsuits, boards, or names that no longer mattered. His words were plain. "I want to thank everyone at this table, not for what you've done, but for being here, for showing up. My biggest lesson wasn't about winning, it was about the privilege of presence. I missed a lot of time chasing what I thought mattered. Tonight, I know what's priceless." He looked around. "Being here together is the greatest honor of my life." Zoe raised her glass too, meeting her father's eyes, then lifting it higher. "I want to thank my mom," she said,
voice steady. "She taught me that the world can only use your shame against you if you let it. She turned what people mocked into armor. She showed me how to make difference a badge of honor." She looked at her friends, each nodding, some near tears. "We all have something we're tempted to hide. I'm done hiding. Promise me you won't either." The toast moved around the table. New beginnings, gratitude, the relief of finally seeing one another clearly. Marcus caught Zoe's eye and remembered all the times he'd tried to protect her by keeping distance. He understood now how absence had forced her to fight alone, and how it had also pushed her to discover her own strength. "I used to think courage meant charging danger," said he softly. "Sometimes courage is staying, not leaving, not giving up." After dinner they lingered, stories traded, confessions shared. Zoe watched her father move easily among her friends and felt the last remnants of old fear slip away. This wasn't just a meal, it was a closing of wounds, a quiet celebration of scars that no longer defined them. She noticed Marcus glance at Lauren Harper Carter's photograph in the hallway and knew she was thinking what she was thinking too, that her mother would be proud, not of the fight, but of the healing. The night wound down, but its warmth stayed. They cleaned together, laughing about the mess, and for the first time, Zoe didn't dread Monday. When Marcus hugged her goodnight, his voice was low and certain. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to really be here." Zoe squeezed his hand. "Thank you for coming back." The table of change was set. Lessons learned, scars turned into stories, and stories into strength. With gratitude spoken and the past finally faced, Zoe and Marcus were ready for whatever came next, together.
With nothing left to hide, the morning sun poured into the kitchen, gentle and unafraid. It stretched across the counters and the quiet floor, turning the house into a place of ease instead of tension. Zoe Carter stood by the counter, pouring orange juice into a chipped glass, her hair loose and unapologetic, curls free, uncontained, a crown she no longer tried to tame. She caught her reflection in the microwave door. No braces, no disguises, no tight knot of fear in her chest, just herself, unfiltered and ready. Marcus Carter leaned against the doorway, watching her with a quiet awe that hadn't faded since the night everything finally broke open. He didn't rush her, didn't offer advice dressed up as protection. He understood now that real strength wasn't about directing someone's steps, but about giving them the space to choose their own. Zoe packed her backpack with deliberate care, the way someone does when they know exactly where they're going. She slipped the silver bracelet onto her wrist, the one that had belonged to her mother, and fastened the small badge Marcus had given her onto her bag. It was modest, almost unnoticeable, but to her it carried weight. Marcus cleared his throat, the sound gentle in the quiet. "You nervous?" Zoe shook her head, a real smile lifting her face. "Not anymore. I thought I'd feel exposed, but I'm just done hiding. I used to wake up hoping no one would notice me. Now I want them to. Not for attention, but so no other girl thinks she's alone." Marcus nodded, pride steady in his eyes. "That's the bravest service," he said. "Not fighting back, standing out." Zoe zipped her bag and paused by the table where Marcus had set down a worn case. He opened it and revealed the medal he'd carried for months, the one meant for another moment that never came. He pressed it into her palm, his grip sure. "This was for valor in the field. Today it's for you, for holding your ground, for never letting them take who you are. I might have been your shield for a while, but your spirit did the real work." Zoe closed her fingers around it, feeling its heft, metal and meaning together. She laughed softly. "You know what's funny? I always thought bravery looked like charging into danger without doubt, like you." She met his eyes. "But you get scared too, don't you?" Marcus grinned, unbothered by the truth. "Out of my mind most days.
I just keep showing up." Zoe laughed, bright and honest. "That's what I'm doing too, showing up, for me, for anyone watching." They stepped onto the porch together, sunlight warming their faces. Marcus handed her lunch and squeezed her shoulder before letting go. "Go make a little noise," he said, half a challenge, half a blessing. Zoe met his gaze, a spark alive there now. "I plan to. Someone has to." She adjusted her backpack so the badge caught the light. Marcus watched her walk down the path, head high, stride easy, curls bouncing with each step. Nothing forced, nothing borrowed. She owned every inch of who she was. He stayed in the doorway until she turned the corner, confident she could handle whatever waited next. The house felt lighter behind him, as if something heavy had finally been carried out and left behind for good. Zoe moved through the neighborhood she once dreaded. Kids who used to whisper now nodded. Some stared. None ignored her. She didn't shrink. She greeted them, voice steady, presence undeniable. Her phone buzzed, messages from Ava and Tyler, both wishing her luck, signing off as friends, not shadows. At the gate of Liberty High, Zoe paused. She breathed in, the bracelet cool on her wrist, the metal firm against her bag. Then she stepped through the doors without hesitation. Her hair, her smile, her refusal to be anyone but herself. In that moment, she became more than a survivor. She became a signal, proof that no one has to disappear to belong. The story didn't end with applause or spectacle. It ended with the simplest, bravest act, a girl walking forward in daylight, unhidden. Back at home, Marcus closed the door and whispered a quiet thank you to Lauren, to Zoe, to the second chance they'd both needed. He understood now that courage isn't only found on battlefields. It lives in ordinary mornings, in choosing dignity over anger, in stepping out the door and being seen. Zoe stood at the threshold of a new day, scars visible, head unbowed. She hadn't lost everything. She'd lost fear and gained herself. Justice hadn't fixed every wound, but it gave her the power to decide who she would become next. And that choice, made again and again, was the bravest service of all. If this journey resonated with you, if you've ever been pushed down and found your own way to rise, share your thoughts below. Your voice might be the hope someone else needs. And if this story mattered to you, stay with us for more stories that do.